Hello, all. My name is Josh, again with Central Penn Environmental. Today, we want to touch base on a couple of key points on one of the most important chemicals to our society, especially in this day and age, um, post pandemic, if you will. Hypochlorous acid has gained traction over the last 20, 30 years, probably. In dramatic fashion in many different industries, primarily for us, food processing, healthcare, childcare. Anytime you have either raw foods, bacterial contamination, viral contamination, a lot of high traffic areas with people who may be sick, transmissible. But for much of the world, hypochlorous acid is still an unknown entity or item. And to be quite honest with you, it's something that our company has been at the forefront of production and usage and application for more than 15 years at this point. So, quite often we hear folks say, I can't believe I've never heard of this before. And most of those folks tend to be doctors, quality assurance folks at different companies. There's a couple of different things, though, that need to be kind of hit for the basic person to understand, what this is. Hypochlorous acid, in general, it comes in many different forms. The form we're going to talk about today is pH neutral. So the hypochlorous acid that's produced out of many companies can be extremely acidic. It can be higher on the pH scale. We're talking about hypochlorous acid that's generally in the neutral range. We produce anywhere from 5.5 pH to 6.7 ish. There are, again, many other forms out there that come in different strengths and different pH levels. We're going to talk about 500 parts per million and right in that low to neutral range today. For a quick synopsis here, if you're not familiar with the chemical itself, hypochlorous acid, very similar to bleach or sodium hypochlorite, if you will, but very different. So both are chlorine-based disinfectants, chlorine-based cleaners. Your standard off-the-shelf sodium hypochlorite, for example, though, is going to be very high on the pH scale, can be highly corrosive. If you've ever had high strength bleach on your skin, it burns, it can leave you with rashes. And many people get the bleach side of things or sodium hypochlorite very misunderstood. People think that that's how you quote unquote disinfect your home or your business or your surfaces. Sodium hypochlorite is a fantastic cleaner. We've seen it work very well everywhere from surfaces to even getting the algae and everything off of your roof or concrete. But on a level of disinfectant, when it comes to chlorines, sodium hypochlorite is actually not very effective. And if you see here kind of on this chart that you notice here in this comparison, I'm not going to get too far into the application and how exactly things do work, but if you're looking at hypochlorous acid, it literally penetrates the cell membrane and the cell wall of any of your pathogens that it's trying to attack. Your sodium hypochlorite, for example, though, does not. And this is where you get a much more effective disinfectant with hypochlorous acid, as it actually attacks the inner membrane in the inner workings of the pathogen that you're trying to kill. But hypochlorous acid molecules penetrate the cell membrane directly and react with internal nutrients, energy sources, and make them inactive or kill them. Hypochlorite ions cannot penetrate that cell membrane and act only from the outside in take much longer contact times. So while they both may kill some of the same pathogens, your sodium hypochlorite needs to have a much longer soak or dwell time, whereas with hypochlorous acid tends to react much faster. So for a quick example, if you're wiping down the tables in a daycare and you use sodium hypochlorite, most times you're going to wipe it off, wipe it down, dry it off, and move on. If that dwell time isn't up to 5 to 10 minutes in some cases, it's actually not very effective. It may clean off the surface, but it doesn't do anything when it comes to pathogen removal or elimination. So sodium hypochlorite is so commonly used to quote-unquote disinfect a children's sleeping mat in a daycare, for example. But you wipe it on, you wipe it off. If you leave the residue on, it leaves white haze or it burns the skin of the child. So a lot of times you rinse it off with water or a wet cloth. That wet cloth or water most likely has bacteria present. So you're actually wiping down and removing a liquid chemical that you think is disinfecting, but you may actually be reinfecting the surface with bacteria infected water or a dirty rag. Hypochlorous acid is generally left on to air dry, which it leaves no residue, and because of that, it's so much more effective in surface cleaning in the aspect where you can leave it on for as long as it needs to air dry, and then you don't have to come back with dirty water or a dirty rag to wipe it down. So that's why a lot of our food processing companies that we work with love fogging it or spraying it into the air. It sticks to everything. They let it air dry. They don't have to recontaminate the surface with anything dirty along the lines of water or rags. So you'll see here that disinfection efficacy is determined by pH when it comes to chlorines. And disinfection will take place ideally within a pH range of 5 to 7. So if you look at the free available chlorine activity on this pH scale, so hypochlorous acid, you'll notice here in the 5 to 6 range, give or take, you're getting nearly 100% of the free available chlorine that's present. If you produce acidic hypochlorous acid or a lot of your acids in the chlorine side, you're not getting nearly the chlorine content that you need to get proper disinfection. And then you'll notice as you get up over 6, it is a tremendous precipitous drop in a free available chlorine. And then if you look at your standard sodium hypochlorite that you're typically using to clean your house or your business, it's actually all the way down here. So the amount of free available chlorine, which is the actual disinfectant in these chemicals, it's the thing that is most effective at killing pathogens. When you get into the higher pH chemicals like you get off the shelf, for sodium hypochlorite, you're getting very limited, if any, type of free available chlorine. And so you'll notice a precipitous drop in the effectiveness of your disinfectant when doing surface cleaning as opposed to your neutral hypochlorous acid, which falls in this range. Again, we produce anywhere from 5.5 to 7. So we're kind of in this range here with most of our HOCl or hypochlorous acid that we produce. And a quick little breakdown here for free available chlorine for those of you who don't know what FAC is. It is chlorine that's present in the form of hypochlorous acid with hypochlorite ions or as dissolved elemental chlorine. So this is essentially, again, when you're talking about your quote-unquote disinfectant, this is what kills your pathogens. This is the most important chemical compound inside your solution. And again, when you're buying off the shelf, you're all the way down here, and this shows your percentage of available chlorine present. We produce up in this range. So a couple of little quick hints or pieces of information here. Hypochlorous acid is 80 to 100 times more effective and kills microorganisms faster than sodium hypochlorite. So again, I remind you, 80 to 100 times more effective than what you're buying off the shelf currently. Hypochlorous acid, which is electrically neutral, and hypochlorite ions, which is electrically negative, will form free available chlorine. This result in disinfection is for both substances have very distinct behaviors. So again, kind of like what we talked about, when you're talking about something that in the chlorine disinfectant world, now this is obviously not your peroxides and ammonia-based cleaners or anything else. We're simply talking about chlorine-based disinfectants and cleaners right now. The more free available chlorine you have available, the stronger the disinfection rate is. Besides the neutrality of hypochlorous acid, it is also much more reactive and stronger disinfectant than hypochlorite. And again, this is just reiterating that at the end of the day, when you produce, as it says down here, between, ours is closer to 5.5, but between, 6 and 7, 5.5 and 7, you're getting much stronger oxidizing power, which is what you're looking for when you're trying to eradicate viruses, bacteria, pathogens, algae. So these are the things when you're thinking about surface cleaning or disinfection, whether it's in a hospital setting, a daycare setting, food processing. While surface cleaning is something we're not going to touch so much on today, this is more on the disinfection side. But if you're quote unquote cutting up some chicken on your counter and you're trying to remove any of those dangerous salmonella or any other possible pathogens that may be left over, while the surface cleaning aspect is very important, but we see a lot of people out there, selling expensive microfiber cloths, saying all you have to do after you cut chicken is wipe it down with this. Without a disinfectant, you're going to leave some pathogen behind, and the pathogen left behind is strong enough to, make your entire family sick. So, if you're going to be cleaning your surfaces, do not forget that the most important aspect is disinfection. One of the big questions that we get a lot of times with hypochlorous acid is, well, if it's 80 to 100 times stronger than my standard, sodium hypochlorite, is it safe? Now, while we do not encourage anyone to do this, this product is also in many forms used in FDA applications for skin and mouthwash, wound washes, and other forms of skin contact. Now it's at a different strength level than what we're currently talking about today. But yes, very safe for surfaces, very safe for human contact, safe for pets, safe in water for aquatic life in most percentages. So again, there's, you don't have the acidifying effect that you get with sodium hypochlorite, or the alkalinity that you get with a lot of hypochlorite as well. So very low on the non-toxic level, very minimal opportunity to get any type of overdose or too much inside the human body. There is an allowable amount, which I'm not going to discuss today because I don't want to put ourselves in those positions. But if you contact a doctor, they will tell you that there are so many ounces per 100 pounds of body weight in a 24-hour period that you can ingest and still be very, very safe. So with that being said, again, when you're fogging or spraying this type of disinfectant into the air, very little PPE is generally required, even though OSHA will always tell you, to cover your eyes, mouth, nose, etc. when working with any type of airborne chemical. But most of our customer base for the last 15 years or so that fogs this into the air has had zero reported instance of respiratory distress, burning of the eyes, any issues with the nose, and in most cases, most people actually feel like after they walk in, they're able to breathe a little easier. This brings down most of the dander in the air, a lot of the toxins, etc. So a couple other things really quickly. Some of the environments that we actually use this liquid very commonly. We do a lot of athletic field disinfection. So while the AstroTurf has grown very, very popular, MRSA, staph, mold, fungus, algae, and biofilm are an enormous problem on plastic or composite-based fields. They're all very dangerous to anyone who gets an open wound, a cut, gets it in their eyes, mouth, nose, etc. The common way to disinfect an athletic sports field is to use a UV light box, and they pull it behind like a little tractor, and the UV light is supposed to, eliminate all of the pathogens. And while UV light is effective in a certain range, they do not fix the issues that lie deeper in the field. Like if you've ever seen your son or daughter come off the field and they have those little black pellets stuck to their legs, those black pellets go very deep into the field, and UV light simply doesn't penetrate that deep. It doesn't eradicate any of the issues underlying underneath the grass. It doesn't handle any of the water that flows underneath or standing water that may be in the field. So you'll see here that only our liquid treatment provides full disinfection of your turf field from top to bottom. And if you notice this little breakdown here, UV light works pretty well on the synthetic fibers here on the top. But you'll notice that there is a drainage blanket underneath, which is never cleaned or disinfected with UV light. You have your ProFlow perforated perimeter drain. It has water standing in it almost at all times. Again, with no penetration of UV light, none of this ever gets disinfected. This track surface usually has a little bit of a drain in between. The drain typically has standing water in it, never gets disinfected. So I always caution against, universities, high schools who are using UV light boxes to do their disinfection. This is not effective. The rubber fill, the drainage match, the drainage stone, the drain line, the nail board all contain high levels of pathogen and contamination when we test them. So we go back to, again, if you want a full proper treatment on an athletic field, or if your children are playing on these AstroTurf fields, be cautious of UV light disinfection. It simply doesn't work well. It may work on the surface, but it doesn't handle any of this other materials involved in the field. If your child has gotten sick playing on a sports field, MRSA, staph, any other form of infection, please contact us. We can help. This is an issue, and it's growing more and more prevalent as more fields convert from grass to artificial turf. Healthcare, again, we work with a multitude of healthcare institutions. And I'll read this here real quick. There is an epidemic of healthcare-associated infection, HAIs, within hospitals, outpatient surgical centers, nursing homes, and other healthcare facilities in the United States. 1 in 25, now this is an older stat, it's actually gotten worse, but 1 in 25 hospital patients has at least one healthcare-associated infection, and one or more than half of all hospital-acquired infections occur outside of the intensive care unit. So this is going to be your, walk-in appointments, sitting in the outpatient room. I cannot stress enough, if your doctor's office, your dentist office still has magazines in the waiting room, this might shock you, but they're never disinfected. The pages on the inside carry an enormous amount of bacteria and pathogens. The magazines in the waiting room never get cleaned. They never get disinfected. And someone out there is going to laugh out loud and say, what are you talking about, the magazines? I'm talking about the magazines. We have encouraged every dentist office we work with, every healthcare facility we work with, to eliminate hand-to-hand paper reading or any type of reading. First of all, everybody's on their cell phones nowadays, which that's a whole nother level of contamination we're not going to get on today. But if you still have standard waiting room magazines, get rid of them. Throw them away. There's no way to properly disinfect them. They're always contaminated. 100% of the time we test them, they're contaminated. That is not an exaggeration. That is a true statement. But back to this, it is estimated that 40% of healthcare-associated infections are attributed to cross-contamination from hands of patients, healthcare workers, and visitors onto environmental surfaces. This is why wiping down with cleaners and disinfectants is an expired, old-school way of doing things. It's not effective. You have to do airborne treatments. I remind people all of the time, you can wipe and clean as much as you want, but if you don't disinfect the bacteria floating through the air or the viruses in the air, they're going to land on surfaces that you just cleaned. That is going to render them dirty. We do surface swab testing, and nearly always we find high levels of pathogens even immediately after disinfection. And again, these are just a couple little highlights from hospitals. Superbugs, they're highly resistant to pathogens. Environmental services staff dilemma. The burden of eliminating surface contamination falls on the environmental services staff. These folks are generally underpaid, undertrained, use dirty materials, and are not provided the correct materials to do the job the right way. So it's a washing machine cycle of filth. And then a lot of times time is money, and environmental services are limited by patient sensitivity. to harsh or toxic chemicals. However, the biggest obstacle for environmental services is time. The average time for an environmental services technician to do a patient terminal cleaning, which would be like a hospital room turnover, is 27 minutes. This isn't also an impossible task considering the amount of workload and limited tools. What this means is, in many cases, these folks are given a minimal amount of time to do a terminal cleaning, and the 27-minute window it can be reduced dramatically, and effectiveness can be increased by utilizing fogging and spraying methods that currently are not being used in most hospitals or healthcare facilities. All this means is it takes way too much time to hand clean a room. And I know people will laugh when I say this, but nobody ever takes the photograph off the wall and disinfects the back of it. And again, we go back to, if the air is filthy, the room is filthy. We do a lot of wrestling mats, work with a lot of universities and colleges. This is very similar to the sports field, safer cleaning and disinfection. This is an older quote, but skin infection is the third most reported injury in wrestling, and of the top three injuries that are reported. There was a stat 2 or 3 years ago that mat herpes was absolutely prevalent in, I think it was like 30 to 40% of wrestling infections. So, there, with skin contact being obviously an issue in wrestling to begin with, open wounds, cleanup, blood decontamination, but mat herpes is an epidemic in wrestling, and it's a shame. But with combat sports becoming more and more popular, MMA, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all of these mats need to be cleaned and disinfected. This is just a breakdown of kind of some of the process that we use to go through and clean. And I'm not going to harp on this because a lot of this is very similar to everything else. But this goes on to say, with spraying versus wiping, you get a much higher penetration rate in the mat between the creases, underneath the tape that you use to put them together. I'm going to wrap this up. I know I kind of went on a little long. This is actually a letter of recommendation from one of our partners. I'm not going to harp too much on the company name at this point. As you can see, it's Kunzler, who is now actually working under a different name. But this was a letter written to me. I'm going to read it out here. Dear Josh, our company has been using your organic hypochlorous acid for approximately 7 years. Now, this was 2 years ago. Your broad-spectrum disinfectant is consistently being used in our Lancaster and Tyrone, Pennsylvania meat processing and USDA-inspected facilities. Much has been learned. I am also confident in saying that there is more for us to learn and greater benefits to glean regarding the disinfectant's usage. Currently, and again, this is still in place, but currently we have 2 sanitation programs that are exclusively designed for this chemical. Daily, we fog each production area. Good cleaning practices followed by a 20 to 30 minute deep fogging will assist in providing longer product shelf life and fewer listeria positives. Equipment product contact surface microbiological counts have also improved. Now, contact surface counts are consistently less than 10 colony-forming units per sample site. Previously, product contact surface microbiological counts ranged from 10 to 40 colony-forming units per sample site. So as you can see, in this quick introduction, they have 2 sanitation programs for the products that we provide. They have standard cleaning practices followed by 20 to 30 minute deep fogging. This is literally done with a Lafferty sprayer, a high pressure sprayer. They fog the entire facility from head to toe. The HVAC system gets treated. Every bit of equipment in the manufacturing facility gets treated. The employees, this is done while they're generally on lunch breaks, and can be done very quickly and effectively. There's no lag time, so the employees can come right back to work immediately after it's done. In addition, we deep fog our production areas during the first and second shift lunch breaks, like I just said. This 20-minute deep fogging will assist in maintaining very low microbial counts on equipment contact surfaces as well as non-product contact surfaces. These very low microbial numbers help us produce longer shelf life on meats. At one time, the USDA granted them 45 additional expiration days because of the cleanliness of their facility. This is directly related to the product we provide. Our maintenance team likes the chemical. Your disinfectant is produced near 7 pH. We have experienced zero metal corrosion. Aluminum, copper, brass, galvanized steel, and stainless steel show no corrosion after 4 years of use. Then it says, I want to let you know how pleased we are here at Kunzler. We have with the results of your broad spectrum disinfectant. First, your product is safe, non-toxic, and wastewater friendly. Our employees are not afraid of fogging the chemical. Previously, we used a quaternary ammonium-based disinfectant. The chemical made our employees sick. Now, employees will deep fog for much longer periods. They feel safe and are not afraid to be working while fogging machine is being used. Second, your product works. Listeria is a pathogen common to wet and cold meat plants. Our listeria findings are significantly lower than previous years. Third, our product shelf life is longer. Your product is very lethal to spoilage microbes. Over the last 4 years, we have increased our hot dog shelf life by 3 weeks. The sliced meat line experienced a 2-week shelf life increase. While testing continues, seems like our bacon lines will also receive a 1 to 2 week shelf life increase, which they have as of now. Another important and more recent disinfectant use is for coronavirus control. And keep in mind, this was back coming out of the height of the coronavirus pandemic. The virus is a serious employee health concern for large meat processing plants. We are learning that fogging your disinfectant into the air is also very effective for coronavirus control. We fog our entire facility over the weekend. This extensive fogging leaves the facility very microbial clean, along with leaving a pleasing smell that our employees like very much. The hypochlorous acid is extremely lethal against the coronavirus. Fogging your disinfectant throughout our meat processing plant has resulted in zero coronavirus employee infections. That was through September 1st of 2020. This is an extremely rare meat processing plant situation. And I'm not sure how much you know about the industry, but there were chicken and pork plants shutting down left and right because of massive outbreaks during this time frame. It says that this will remain an important chemical to our state-of-the-art sanitation program. Weekly, we conduct over 200 microbial tests, which is controlled by the USDA. And our environmental and product contact surface microbiological tests clearly show less and less numbers. There is no substitute for good cleaning process. However, your chemical adds value to our sanitation program and is one of the major reasons for sanitation, shelf life, employee health, and pathogen control improvements observed at their company over the last 7 years. Now, I'm not going to harp on, how important this particular letter is. However, if you reach out to me directly, I will give you the contact information of the gentleman who's in charge of quality assurance who actually wrote this letter. And as you can see down here, I'm not going to expose his name, on here. But it says, I welcome discussion of results and experience with other companies that may be interested in this interesting and effective disinfectant. This gentleman, I can only say, is one of the few folks I know who probably knows a little bit more about this product than our company does. He studied this with a professor in Japan for 2 years. And if you're familiar with central Pennsylvania and the amount of chocolate produced here, I'm not going to say the name, but you can probably put 2 and 2 together. He was a quality assurance manager for that particular company for more than a decade, and then has been with this meat company for now, I believe, a little over a decade. So 25 years of experience with this particular chemical, and as you can tell, he's still learning more as we go. So that's all I have today. I know this was a really long 30 minutes. This is designed more as a breakdown for some of our commercial customers that we work with. But again, hypochlorous acid, also known as HOCl, its chemical formula, is by far the most effective, safest, and one of the most revolutionary chemicals we've come across. We as a company do produce this chemical for many folks, but a lot of our customers actually purchase the generators for clean in place or CIP and generate their own on site, which is another major benefit over sodium hypochlorite. So if you have any interest in talking or discussing the uses of a machine or installation, please contact us directly. You can go to cpenviro.com and fill out the form at the bottom, or you can email us at any time at info@cpenviro.com, and our phone number is 717-500-6631. And again, if you call that number, just ask for Josh, and I will be happy to discuss any of this with you at any time. Thank you.